And we're live for our very first college football preview of the playoffs and a couple other bowl games. Welcome, Derik. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you. Welcome. I know this is something we're trying a little different than what we normally do in IndyCar, but yeah, we're gonna give the old football podcast here a try, and yeah, we're gonna be talking about a couple upcoming college football playoff games, and then maybe a couple selected other bowls as well.
Yep, most definitely. We got two barn burners of a playoff game coming up this coming Monday on New Year's Day with the Wolverines of Michigan taking on the Crimson Tide of Alabama. And then in the nightcap, we have the Washington Huskies led by Michael Penix Jr. Going up against the vaunted, finally back, as everyone wants to say, Texas Longhorns, being led by Quinn Ewers. Um, two phenomenal games that I can't wait. You know, I'm a big Michigan fan, so that Michigan game in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, it's got me on edge. You know, listening to everyone's take on it. Everyone just, Michigan might as well not even show up. We just might as well not play because we didn't make it this far due to the fact that we're good. We did it because, as you know, we cheated, and it was just a debacle of a season. And how dare we be there? But you know what? I got faith, and we're gonna see how this all boils out on Monday.
Yeah, I think both games are intriguing in their own right. For example, like you just stated there with Alabama and Michigan, um, Alabama came from nowhere. I think is would be the correct term to use. There early in the year, they did lose to Texas, so it was highly contested. That if Texas makes it into the college football playoff, well, if Alabama wins out and beats a very good Georgia team, let's not knock the Georgia Bulldogs, the two-time defending national champions. That Alabama needed to be put in the college football playoff as well. I think it came to a surprise to a lot of people, especially that team up north, that they drew Alabama in their semifinal game. But looking at beginning of the year when they lost at home to another college football playoff foe in Texas, I think Alabama is a totally different team than they were beginning of the year when they did lose to Texas. Jalen Milrow, I think has came into his own. The more snaps he has gotten to take this year, and obviously going through a vaunting SEC schedule does help him to mature and grow as well. So Alabama, it was surprising. I know I mentioned this to you earlier today. It was surprising to me to know that Michigan, like you said, is a 1.5 point favorite. That was kind of an eyebrow raiser to me. And then on the other side of the coin, Michigan, they are on this. I think you want they're on a not revenge, but they're on a goal oriented track. They want to win a not only a college football playoff game where they've come up short the last couple of years, but they want to win a national championship as well. I think knock on Michigan earlier in the year was looking at their schedule. Everybody asked who they played. The tougher games they had were in November, obviously. excuse me, with Penn State and with Ohio State. So I think it's going to be interesting. Um, I've told you this. Just looking at this, I'm not sure where I would give Michigan the advantage. I think maybe at running back, if there was one. I think Michigan has an advantage. Obviously, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Going to be interesting to see how they adapt playing against a Alabama defense. Penn State played tough defense. Ohio State played tough defense, but as I told you, um, their 5 stars are different from everyone else's 5 stars. So I think this is arguably the toughest defense Michigan is going to face outside of Penn State, excuse me, and in Ohio State. So it's going to be interesting to see what wrinkles Jim Harbaugh, Sharon Moore, and others have installed for this game, because I definitely think they're going to need to pull a leave the everything but the kitchen sink, as they say. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the backup quarterback have a package or two, like he did against Ohio State back in November.
Definitely, this is probably the best. This is the most mobile quarterback that Michigan will have faced. Milrow comes in, at the beginning of the season, like we said, it was shaky, but I think that was more of Tommy Reese, the offensive coordinator for Alabama, just needed to be able to cater the offense around Milrose. I think he at the beginning of the year he was trying to force his offense in through Milrow rather than adapting his offense to what Milrose skill set. It is true. Michigan's first couple of weeks, they were not impressive. I'm not a big fan of the scheduling opponent so far out. 10 years out, and you come up with a season like this where we beat UNLV. Bowling Green gave us a little bit of a game. Picked JJ off 3 times, but other than that, we didn't have until we got to Penn State and Maryland and Ohio State, and even Iowa. Iowa's defense, they may not have a juggernaut of an offense, but their defense was one of the top in the country at preventing people from being good, and we were still able to put up 20 some points on them in the Big Ten championship with our All-American guards that Zach Zinter going out in the with a broken tibia and fibia in the Ohio State game the week before. It is going to be a tough task, and it's going to be a big, tall task for Michigan's defense to be able to keep up with Milrose, because you never know. He can throw the ball. He's not a very good intermediate ball thrower, but he can throw the deep ball, as we've seen on 4th and 31. And I don't know what in the world Auburn thought they were doing when all they were doing running around and singling. It escapes me what the wide receiver's name is in the back of the end zone, but that was just a debacle. But if you watch the Iron Bowl, the one thing that Auburn was able to do was run on Alabama. Now, am I saying that Michigan's gonna be able to run all over Alabama? I am not, but I am hoping that Donovan Edwards has a much better game than he's had these years. I mean, he had fantastic games last year, but this year he just has not been able to get on track, and I'm hoping that they are able to hone in and get him some runs. When we get on the goal line, Blake Corum, he's number 2. You hand the ball to that kid, and he's going to get lost behind the line of scrimmage and going to get in. He doesn't have 22 touchdowns on the season for nothing. This our running game is a little bit down the range. With Penn State, we didn't have to throw the ball. We just lined up and played big boy football. against them and just ran all over them. Ohio State, there was the controversial touchdown to Roman Wilson in the end zone, whether it be a touchdown or an interception. I mean, we it's already been determined, but JJ is going to have to play a much bigger role. I know he was hurt throughout the latter half of the season. He had an ankle injury. Hopefully, this month off has given him the chance to be able to heal and he can get in there and be better. Colston Loveland, our big sophomore tight end, is going to have to play a lot better. And Barner, the transfer, AJ Barner, transfer from IU, he'll have to play some big snaps. Roman Wilson will be back. I know he was banged up during the Big Ten championship game and didn't get a lot, but it's going to be a tall task. But you know what? Our defense, going over to Michigan's defense, they are one of the most, I would say, they're one of the most senior laden teams. If you have Will Johnson on the corner as your corner, Mike Sanders still, he's got 5 interceptions on the season, and he just seems like he is a well-rounded kid that has taken over the defense that has been able to keep hold opponents to a whopping less than 10 points per game. Now we did give up more points towards the end, but to be able to say you went the entire season and averaged less than 10 points a game given up, that's a lot to say for a defense. I know one of our linebackers is going to be playing with 2 casts on his hand. That's going to be Junior Colston. He broke a finger during the Purdue game and subsequently has had more hand injuries, but he's going to play. I'm just looking forward to this. Alabama is a tall task, as I keep saying, but I think if Michigan can play a almost flawless game and be able to keep Milroe in the pocket and make him throw, I think we can pick him off a couple times. Not too concerned about the line right now. It's 1.5 for Michigan. That's basically just a pick 'em game. They're only getting the 1.5 due to the fact that they're the number 1 seed. So it's gonna be a fantastic game in Pasadena, and I hope the Michigan Wolverines can come out on top. I have high hopes for it. What do you think about this? What do you think about the Sugar Bowl that we're going to get into? Who do you think has the edge, Washington or Texas?
I'll comment on that first, and I want to get back to taking a little bit a deeper look into the statistics between both
Okay.
Alabama and Michigan. But I think the Sugar Bowl later in on the first is I think it's going to be the better of the 2 games. The intriguing point to me, I think, is, and we've talked about this with numerous people over the years, that the Pac-12 doesn't play defense, and we joke that it's the first team to 50, but I think Washington is going to be tested, especially offensively, with the front that Texas is going to bring. I think this is going to be the best defensive front that Washington is going to face all year. So I think that's going to be something to watch and to see if Penix has time to throw, because obviously, when Penix struggles, Washington struggles. But when he's able to sit back in the pocket and look for his reads downfield, he can pick apart a defense like anybody else in the country. So I think that's the most intriguing thing to me, is how Washington's O line handles the great front 4 that Texas is going to bring in that game. But we'll get on to that here momentarily. I want to take a look. You talked about some of the characteristics, some of the similarities that Alabama and Michigan are going to bring in the Rose Bowl. Just taking a look statistic wise, they match up really fairly well. You have Alabama coming in averaging 35 points a game. That's 17th best in the country. Michigan's offense is no slouch either. They're scoring 36 points a game. That puts them 14th in the country. So they're both right there offensively when it comes to lighting up the scoreboard. Rush offense. Alabama averages 172 yards a game. That's 47th in the country. Michigan at 161 yards a game. That's 61st in the country. I know you talked about the dynamic running game that Michigan brings with both Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. I've talked about and through my film study, and I've told you this. I think Edwards is the better of the two backs. I think he does more. I think he is more skilled coming out of the backfield. But when it comes to running between the tackles, who better to have back there than number 2, Blake Corum. In the passing game, again, very close as well. Alabama Jalen Milroe averages 228 yards a game. That's 60th in the country. And Michigan throws the ball for 218 yards a game. That's 73rd in the country. So right there again, close as well. And then the last thing I want to look at on the offensive side of the ball, total yards. Alabama averages a little over 400 yards a game, 401 to be exact. That puts them at 55th in the country at that. And Michigan averages about 380 yards on offense, and that puts them 70th in the country. So, again, statistically speaking, on the offensive side of the ball, like you said, a lot of similarities between both Alabama and Michigan offensively. Now, defensively, where Michigan hangs their hat, so to say, is there it is. Michigan hangs their hat. Alabama defensively gives up about 18 points a game. That puts them 16th in the country. And Michigan averages a little less than 10 points a game at 9.5. That is the best in the country when it comes to opponents scoring. Giving up defensively on the ground, Alabama averages about 124 yards a game that they give up defensively. That puts them 31st in the country. And on the flip side, Michigan gives up under 90 yards a game on defense, 87 to be exact, and that is 6th best in the country. Through the air defensively, Alabama gives up about 188 yards a game. That's 24th in the country. Michigan, a little less than that, gives up just over 150 yards a game, 152 to be exact. That is 2nd best in the country. And then total yards, Alabama's defense gives up about 313 yards a game. That puts them at 17th in the country. And Michigan checks in at just giving up just under 240 yards a game at 239. That puts them 2nd best in the country. Now, something else I know that is big in games like this is getting opponents off the field. Alabama only gives up 33% of third down conversions to an opponent. That's 26th best in the country. Michigan only gives up 30% of opponents' third down conversions. That puts them at 14th in the country. So, Josh, all year, Michigan has held their hat, so to say, on the defensive side of the ball. So definitely going to be, I think, a huge cat and mouse game between the two wisely veteran coaches in Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, it's interesting you talked about the coaching. There's no doubt about that Nick Saban is and probably will reign as the greatest college football coach to ever coach the game. So I think Alabama has, even though Michigan has, a steady brain trust with Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh as your head coach, Jesse Minter as your defensive coordinator, and Sharon Moore as your offensive coordinator. I just think that when it comes to the coaching staff, I think Alabama having Nick Saban in their corner gives them a distinct edge. Now, am I saying that Michigan is going to be outcoached? I am not saying that. I'm just saying in the coaching aspect, you got to give it to Alabama, especially when you give Nick Saban a month, almost an entire month, to prepare for a team. He's gonna have those Crimson Tide ready to go, coached up and ready to go. And we all know, even when Alabama's doing fantastic, I mean, they could be up 30. Milroe throws an interception, and he's still on Milroe when he comes off the field. That is how much that man loves to coach and how hard he is to please. Now, I think Jesse Minter is going to have something planned up for Alabama and trying to confuse Jalen Milrose. If you remember, Marvin Harrison said after the game against Michigan that he was seeing stuff that he had never seen before out of Michigan that was confusing him, and that's hard to say. That's high praise for a guy that's going to be the number one, maybe two, possibly three pick in the entire NFL draft that's coming here, provided he comes out, because he hasn't decided if he's coming out or not. But for someone like Marvin Harrison, who is such a phenomenal athlete, who was a Heisman Trophy winner, to come out and say that a defensive coordinator was able to stump him and give him looks he had never seen, maybe Jesse Minter can come up with something that confuses Milrose, and he can get a couple sacks, maybe, because one of the things that Milroe doesn't do very well is he runs well, but he holds on to the ball, and Alabama has given up I think close to 40 sacks this year so far, if I remember correct. And if you get him to stay in the pocket, I think that's where Michigan's going to have an advantage, because Michigan is able to rotate in so many different guys on their front line that helps out. You got Kenneth Grant, who's a huge guy. He's a sophomore. He came on earlier in the season with a couple strip sacks. I think he had one for a touchdown. You've got McGregor, who comes off the edge so fast that sometimes the quarterbacks don't have a chance to get the ball out. And don't forget, they'll stunt, and they'll bring Sammer Still on a nickel blitz, or they'll even bring Will Johnson sometimes on there. So I'm hoping Minter can come up with something that confuses them. Now on the offensive side, you know what you're getting with Michigan. They're going to line up. They're going to put extra men up there, and they are going to typically run to the numbers. They are going to try to get Blake Corum a hole just small enough to where he can sliver through and get a good touchdown, get some good yardage. Like you said, I do think Donovan Edwards is the more skilled back. He catches the ball out of the backfield a lot more, so that gives him a distinct advantage over Corum, because Corum is not a prototypical catcher of the ball out the backfield. This is going to be a barn burner. I am so nervous. As I said earlier, I've listened to the Joel Klatz, and I've listened to the Skip Baylesses of the world, and Michigan doesn't have a chance. But I think when you throw everything out, I think Michigan's going to have a chance if they can play a perfect game, and if they win, it's going to be a feather in Jim Harbaugh's cap, and we're going to be one step closer to a national championship that we haven't seen since 1997, with the great Charles Woodson coincidentally winning the Heisman that year, and also beating Washington State just by chance in the Rose Bowl. It's it's going to be fantastic, and I cannot wait. I'm either going to be happy on Tuesday, or I'm going to be really, really upset on Tuesday. But that's how the cookie crumbles, and we're going to see how this goes.
Yeah, you touched on Coach Minter, and he's going to. It's going to be interesting to see with him having a NFL background and having so long to prepare for Alabama. What different fronts, what different looks, like you said, he is going to bring to Jalen Minter to try to confuse him and try to throw him off his game. And I think there's 5 players on the defensive side of the ball for Michigan that I think they're going to have to be they're going to have to come up big. And I think Mason Graham. I know he was first team All Big Ten this year. The defensive lineman. I think he needs to be very disruptive. And then you touched on Junior Colson as well at linebacker, and then Michael Barrett, who actually, believe it or not, according to Pro Football Focus, has graded out as the highest graded linebacker in the Big Ten. So he's need to make his presence felt early and often. And then the tall task that Will Johnson, who actually, believe it or not, has not allowed a touchdown in coverage this year. And then, like you said, Mikey Santa still there, who 5 picks, 2 forced fumbles this year. I think all 5 of those defensive players for Michigan are going to have to be felt early and often for them to be able to stay in this ball game for 4 quarters. I know a lot of people are saying, as you said, that Michigan doesn't have a chance. I think offensively, I think they keep it close. Obviously, their defense is going to have to get a stop or two, an extra stop or two to get their offense on the field, or even give J.J. McCarthy and company a short field to work. But I think at the end of the day, it's hard to pick against Alabama, especially the way they played against Georgia. And if I was a betting man, I'm going to say Alabama wins this. But I think it's close. I think Alabama wins this by 10 points.
Interesting. I'm going to go with it. This is a close game. I'm going to take Michigan though. I'm going to take Michigan 24-21 by a field goal. I think that the heartache of Michigan the last 2 years, the first year we made the playoffs, we got stomped by a superior Georgia team. And then last year, I don't know if we just overlooked TCU or what it was, but we came out and we were lackluster. And JJ had two pick sixes that were not. They were unexcusable, and they were still in that game towards the end of that game, and it just didn't turn out well for us. But I am going to go with this low scoring game considered, and at 24-21. I'm optimistic. I can't wait. It's going to be an exciting game. I'll be sitting here on my couch watching it and either cursing at the TV or up and down cheering.
Definitely a worthy watch, obviously, and keep in mind that the officiating crew is assigned to this game between Alabama and Michigan is going to be a Big 12 officiating crew. So keep that in mind as well. Now, there's also a second game there that's going to kick off at about 8:45. New Year's, and we touched on a little bit. It's the other college football playoff semifinal between number 3 Texas and number 2 Washington down there in the Caesars Superdome, not Silverdome, as one wrestler would say, the Superdome. And it's a Big Ten officiating crew for that one. And, like I said, this may be the better of the 2 games. Both these teams come in. Texas, their last Big 12 championship, and then Washington taking the Pac-12 title from Oregon. Statistically, offensively, Texas scores about 36 points a game. That puts them 16th in the country. Washington right behind them at 37 points a game, or excuse me, in front of them rather, at 37 points a game. That puts them 11th. Texas does run the ball a little better, almost 190 yards per game. That's 24th in the country. Washington averages about 125 yards on the ground rather per game. That puts them about 100th. Now, passing, this is where Washington makes their hay. Michael Penix and company averages 343 yards in the air. That is best in the country. And Texas with Quinn Ewers, 286 yards a game. That puts them 18th in the country. As for total offense, Texas averages about 475 yards a game. That's 9th best in the country. And Washington right behind them at 469 yards a game. That is 10th best in the country. I know something we didn't touch on. I know you talked about red zone when Michigan has the ball, but third down efficiency for Texas, they convert on third down about 38% of the time. That's 68th best in the country. Washington converts almost 50% of the time on third down. That's 11th best in the country. And then in the red zone, Texas usually cashes in about 80% of the time. That puts them at 90th in the country. And Washington cashes in about 85% of the time. That is 63rd in the country. On the flip side, defensively, Texas gives up about 17 and a half points a game. That's 13th in the country, while Washington, like we talked about, doesn't play as good a defense or as great a defense as what Texas does. They give up about 23 points a game. That puts them at 51st in the country. Opponents are able, with Texas, to get about 80 yards on the ground. That's third best in the country, while Washington gives up 133 yards per game. That is 40th in the country. And Josh, this glaring stat right here, opponents are able to throw for about 240 yards against Texas. That's 94th in the country. But for Washington, opponents are able to throw for almost 264 yards against Washington's defense. Their back half, that puts them at 123rd in the country. And then Texas defensively gives up 321 yards per game. That's 25th in the country, while Washington gives up 396, almost 400 yards a game. That puts them 93rd in the country. So there's your statistical look at both offense and defense there for Texas and Washington.
Yeah, Pac-12 has never been known to play defense, and you know what? To be fair, neither is the Big 12. There's been years where, I mean, each conference, it's just who is the first to 50. It was, up and down. This is going to be a track meet. When you say this is going to be the more interesting game, I think it's going to be, if you're a one that wants to see the ball go up and down the field, be ready to watch Michael Penix throw that ball to Rome Odunze. Odunze is he's going to be a top pick in the draft this year, just because he has such phenomenal hands and such phenomenal speed. Penix, he's got an arm. It amazes me, and it makes me think, how on earth could he be at IU and not be able to put up the numbers he did here? Was it lack of offense? Is Caleb DeBoer, the head coach for Washington, that much superior to Tom Allen, who is currently getting ready to be the defensive coordinator for Penn State next year? It just, the turnaround that Michael Penix has been able to play in his 10 years of NCAA football. It seems like he's been there forever, but it hasn't been 10 years. But seems like he's been there a long time. Just the fact that Penix is in this game is a testament to his resilience, because he was injured every year he was at IU, and finally he got to Washington, and maybe the offensive line just was able to take care of him more. Now on the other side of the ball with Quinn Ewers, I know he's been banged up a couple times over the years, but he started out at Ohio State and he moved to Texas, and everyone thought when Arch Manning committed to Texas that Arch was going to be, with his pedigree, he was going to be the starting quarterback this year. But Quinn came in and said, not going to happen. I'm the veteran statesman here. I'm I've got this team, and I'm going to take us. I'm going to take us as far as I can. You know, Arch will be the backup in case Quinn comes out due to the fact that Malik Murphy, for some reason, chose to go into the portal before the playoff game. We'll get to that here in a little bit about my disdain for the portal happening so early on in the season, making kids have to choose and not being able to play out the rest of the season with their chosen team at that particular point. Um, I've only seen Texas play one time this year. I watched them when they lost the Red River Shootout to Oklahoma, and they just I mean, it was a high scoring game, came down to the last possession, but I think Quinn has asserted himself as a suitable quarterback. Steve Sarkisian's been able to come in and revive the Texas Longhorn team, much to the chagrin of Matthew McConaughey, you know, their biggest alumni. Um, but I'm sure he'll be on the sideline cheering them on, going, all right, all right, all right, let's go Longhorns. You know, hook 'em horns is what everyone tells me. But I mean, I think that's weird. But we shall see. I can't wait. It's gonna be a late night. You know, 8:45 is a late start, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, like I said, a lot of intriguing parts when it comes to this game. Um, you talk about Michael Penix, why he didn't have the success at Indiana as he's had at Washington. I would imagine health probably, like you said, attributes to a lot of that. But I don't know if people know this or not. But believe it or not, the head coach at Washington, Caleb DeBoer, was actually Michael Penix's offensive coordinator at Indiana. So interesting that the reason maybe Penix followed DeBoer out to Washington. But both quarterbacks obviously have had great years. Quinn Ewers, the former Ohio State transfer, you know, he threw for 3,100 yards, 21 touchdowns. I know he was banged up late in the year. Malik Murphy, recent transfer to Duke, played a little bit, and then Arch Manning, the hype around Arch Manning, he was able to get in on some mop up duty as well. Michael Penix, who was a Heisman Trophy finalist, threw for 4,200 yards and 33 touchdowns. So definitely could see some fireworks there on for both offenses when they have the ball. Rushing, very similar as well. Jonathan Brooks, who I do believe is out for Texas, was their leading rusher, 1,100 yards, 10 touchdowns. Dylan Johnson for Washington, similar stats. He also ran for 1,100 yards and 14 touchdowns. And now the two leading receivers I could see big games between during this contest. Xavier Worthy for Texas, just shy of 1,000 yard season at 969 yards and 5 touchdowns, and the second best receiver behind Marvin Harrison Jr., the Maserati Marv. I know you love to call him that. Is Roman Duze. 1,400 yards, believe that or not, for a wide receiver. 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns. So we could definitely be in, Josh, for some fireworks in this second game. But like I said, the one thing I'm looking out for, and I touched on this earlier, I don't believe Washington has played a front that they're gonna see against Texas, and that's gonna tell me a lot how Washington comes out and how they adjust to that front four of Texas. Because if they don't get an answer for that early, Quinn Ewers and the gang could put this to bed, because we have seen that Texas can score and score quickly in the blink of an eye. So my key, what I'm going to be watching is how Washington's offensive line adjusts to Texas's front four, because like I said, I don't believe they've faced a front four that they're going to see against Texas. And I'm going to go prediction. like I said, these teams are so close. A lot of similarities, I think, lie between both of these teams. I have seen each team probably a handful of times, not a full game, but just clips and drives and things. But I think Texas right now, not only did they have the more momentum coming out of conference championship weekend, but I think they're the more complete team. I think this one's going to be close too, but I'm going to say again, I think Texas, Texas by 7, 31-23, something along those lines. But I'm going to I'm going to say Texas wins by a touchdown.
Interesting. Texas is favored by 4 currently still with the over under of 63 and a half. That's a high scoring game. I am going to go the opposite. I'm going Washington. I just think Washington was able to go into the Pac-12 championship and be a 10-point dog to a team that they had beaten earlier in the year, and they handled them. They handled Oregon, they handled Bo Nix, and they were able to overcome them. I think Washington is the team to beat on this game. Washington may not have faced a front like Texas, but I do not think that Texas has faced a wide receiving core nor a quarterback that is as talented as this husky wide receiving core and Penix. Penix. Don't forget he can throw the ball, but he can also run. He's got legs. He showed it at IU. He hasn't had to show it as much at Washington, just due to the fact that he's able to throw the ball all over the yard. So I am going to go with Washington with a score of 42 to 35. 42-35. I think it's a 7-point win for Washington, and I think they cover. And I think there's going to be an over on this one, so it'll be very interesting. The last bowl game, both of these teams, their last bowl games came back in 2022. Washington was able to win theirs. Uh, Coincidentally, that's pretty funny. Last year, these two teams played in the Alamo Bowl. I just now noticed that, and Washington was able to come away with the win last year. So I am going to go with Washington. I think Washington's got the momentum, and I think we're going to end up with a Washington versus Michigan um, national championship for all the marbles.
All right, you have Washington and Michigan, and
Yep,
ironically, that would that be the last? Well, no, because you said it was Washington State.
with
So
Washington
okay, so if
State.
you have Washington and Michigan as your national title game, okay, Washington State. Okay, so if you have Washington and Michigan as your national title game, who comes out of that on Monday, January 8th, as the national champion? Who you got?
Obviously, I'm going to go with Michigan. I think Michigan is their secondaries better to cover the wide receivers that Washington has. I think you put Will Johnson on Roma Dunze. I think you can, and I think that Michigan's front four are able to contain um, Michael Penix because they're gonna have to contain Jalen Milrose the week before, and if they can do that, I think they can keep that. I think they can contain Michael Penix better um, than any team that's been able to face them.
All right, so you're going to say Michigan comes out of this college football playoff, the last era of the college football playoff with 4 teams, and they're going to go out on top, and that's going to send Jim Harbaugh to the NFL. Okay. So my side, I picked Alabama, and I picked Texas. Obviously, this would be a rematch earlier in the year in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, I feel that both of these teams are two totally different teams from when they met early in the year in Tuscaloosa. Watching Alabama against Georgia, I thought that they were way more convincing than I thought Texas was against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game. So as much as this pains me to say it, because I am a huge Alabama hater, I guess. Maybe that's the right way to say it. My national champion is going to be Alabama. I think they'll face Texas, and I think Alabama wins. It's close. I think all four of these teams are evenly matched in one way or the other. But I still think Alabama is going to be the national champion as they beat Texas by 10 points.
So I just got a question. So the Iron Bowl figures nothing into any of this. The fact that it took a miracle of 4th and 31. They were on the 4th and goal from the 31. Auburn all but had that game wrapped up, and Auburn was just dumb and somehow had a brain fart and didn't and only rushed. They didn't even rush. They rushed 0. That was the first time I've ever seen someone rush 0 and drop 8 and still get beat. So Alabama is a fantastic team, but the Iron Bowl figures nothing into this. Georgia this year was a fantastic team, but Georgia wasn't Georgia of the last 2 years. They were not. They didn't have Stetson Bennett. They didn't. Their defense was not as dominant. They struggled against teams this year. They struggled against the team that your Ohio State Buckeyes are going to play in Missouri on tomorrow. How do you discount the Iron Bowl and all of a sudden Alabama is just this fantastic team? They had a stinker against Auburn. South Florida, they only won by 3 points against South Florida. I don't prescribe to the fact that earlier in the season doesn't matter. Earlier in the season does matter. It matters, and it should matter. And I don't think Alabama should have been in. I mean, you could tell me all day that Florida State was not the team without Jordan Travis, but they still won. They won. I don't think Alabama, and this has nothing to do with fear of Alabama. I don't fear Alabama as everyone says Michigan did. Michigan, yes, in the grand scheme of things, they thought they were going to see Florida State because it was supposed to be Florida State. You win, you go undefeated, you win your major 5 conference, one of the big Power 5 conferences, and you get shut out because all of a sudden the committee, who has for years never had a team that was undefeated in a Power 5 conference, and they said, well, the quarterback doesn't matter. It sure the heck didn't seem to matter when Ohio State got in after J.T. Barrett went out and Cardell Jones came in, so they changed it. I can't stand the committee. This 4-team playoff has been a debacle ever since. We're going to a 12-team playoff next year, and maybe we'll fight over who's going to have the third. But I just don't understand where everyone's like, Alabama's this world beaters. No, they're not. They were 1 play away from losing to Auburn, who is a subpar SEC team. They almost lost to South Florida, which I can't tell you what conference South Florida's in. Couldn't tell you. Are they in the American Conference? They had 1 good game all year long. 1 good game, and they got trounced at home by the Texas Longhorns. At home, not in Austin, Texas, in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They got beat. They are not the best team. If they were the best team, they'd be number 1. They're number 4. So I mean, how do we say that they beat one team? One team they beat, and in my opinion, I think Washington has the best resume of any team because they were able to beat Oregon twice, not once but twice. That vaunted Oregon offense, they were able to contain them. I would have been happy if Washington would have been one and Michigan would have been two because I think Michigan's offense towards the end of the year was not the best, but they did win. I don't ever subscribe to the fact of, oh well, they're a different team from the year from earlier in the season. What if they go out and they lay an egg against Michigan? What's everyone going to say then? Oh, Michigan got lucky again, I guess. I don't
All right, there is a lot to unpack here. First, I am in total agreement with you. Auburn defensive call away from being number 4. I felt they should have been number 4. I have said that since the last rankings were put out. They did everything that was asked of them. They did it with a backup quarterback, and they did it with a third string quarterback. Every opponent that was put in front of them, they beat. I had no issue putting Florida State at 4, but I told you what was going to happen. They weren't good. The committee wasn't going to do that.
There's an
And that's
SEC
exactly
bias.
what happened. Now, when it comes to rivalry games, that's got to be the most bonehead defensive call in the history of defensive calls. About knows exactly what Auburn was doing because I don't. How do you? It's 4th and a country mile, and you give up a play over your head that seals your fate. I have no answer. I have no answer for that. Yes, Alabama did get beat by Texas in the year, but right now, and this is I think this is the thing that I think the committee, which again we're going to a 12-team playoff next year, and my question is, why do we need 12? Why not go to 8? It just seems like 12 are consolation prizes because around this time next year, when the last rankings come out, we're going to be debating who's 12, who's 13. I don't see why we need 12. Go to 8. Give the top 2 teams a bye and go to 8. I think 12's way too many. But anywho, Michigan laid an egg against Maryland, and Michigan was a quarterback not named Kyle McCord away from getting beat by Ohio State. So, and you just made my point earlier where you said Michigan was not. What did you say something about they weren't offensively? They weren't as efficient in the beginning of the year, or they're not as efficient at the end of the year as they were at the beginning of the year. So, are they a different team from the beginning of the year to now? Yes.
Yes, they are a different team. But they did the one thing that Alabama couldn't do.
Okay, so
They beat every team that was put in front of them. Alabama can't say that. Alabama lost. I think Texas is not as good as Ohio State. I think Ohio State was a fantastic team this year. As much as that fan base wants to rile all over and dump all over Kyle McCord, he was put in there. Ryan Day put him in there, and he was fantastic. He had 2 interceptions against Michigan. One of those, Marvin Harrison gave up. On that first one, Marvin Harrison gave up. He didn't even try to fight. I think it was Samerstill who had that. So that one, I don't blame that one on McCord. The last one, McCord was under duress. He threw the ball up. It happened. I think Ohio State is better than Texas. I think they have better. They just ran into a team that in the middle of the game, one of Michigan's key captains went down, and that Michigan was able to rally behind Zinter and be able to go out there and finish out that game. But Florida State did what Alabama couldn't do. There is an SEC bias in that committee, and no one can tell me that it wasn't. Because had Alabama lost to Auburn and still gone on and beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, Alabama would still be in here. Because for some reason, everybody in this entire country that has anything to do with college football has to say the SEC has to be in there. We just can't do it. The SEC has won so many national championships, but so we just can't leave them out. Not to mention, the SEC had a losing record in non-conference games this year. Yes, the SEC is a fantastic conference, but this year they were down, and they didn't deserve to have an entry into the college football season, into the playoffs. I will stick to that forever. Past, yes, they have dominated, but this year you had a conference that had a losing record against non-conference opponents. And you're still telling me that the SEC deserved to be in over a team that with a third string quarterback won a Power 5 conference championship. Undefeated. Tell me there's not an SEC bias.
Like I said, I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. I've continually said Florida State did everything that was asked of them with a second string quarterback and a third string quarterback, and they still went undefeated. But I told you exactly what was going to happen. And this is because, and again, I know we don't have the clip, but if you go back, the late, great Mike Leach had it best. Mike Leach had it best. Why do we form committees? What's the point? Why play? Why play the games if we're going to have a committee of 12 people? Half of them, if not the majority of them, have never played a down of football, never coached a down of football in their life, but yet we're going to depend on these 12 committee men and women to tell us who the 4 best teams are. Now, it's not the 4. Is it the 4 best teams, or is it the 4 teams playing the best at that moment in time? That is where things are screwed up. They want to put the 4 best teams out there. It's not the 4 best teams at that moment in time. It's the 4 best teams, no matter everything else. So why play the games if it's going to boil down to a room full of men and women, again, that may or may not played a down or coached a down of football, are going to tell us who the 4 best teams are? Why play games if they're not going to matter?
Why play games against Power 5 out of conference teams? I mean, I don't understand it. Florida State beat LSU. Florida State beat LSU earlier in the season with the Heisman Trophy winner, the current Heisman Trophy winner, JT Daniels. Or no, not JT Daniels. The LSU quarterback. He is the current Heisman Trophy winner, and Florida State beat them.
Jalen Daniels.
There you go.
Jalen Daniels.
Jalen Daniels. They beat him. They beat him convincingly. And it's just, it's a travesty, the fact that those kids, because of one player, quarterback does not make a team. Does not. Ohio State proved that back when they won the national championship and Cardell Jones came in with one half against Michigan and then one championship game against Wisconsin where he dominated. Proved it. And for the committee to come out and say that one player means more for means one for a team that what about it? What about their defense? Their defense is dominant. It's a travesty. It's a sham. It's a Travis sham accuracy, as was somebody famous once said. The fact that that Florida State did not get into this championship, but alas, it's done. It's over with. The games are coming on Monday, and I'm going to drink heavily for a little while before the game because the last two games have not gone my way, and I'd like to be in a better mood. But it's exciting. This podcast is getting my blood boiling, and I'm excited, for this podcast. We have been talking about this, and I am so excited we have gotten to do it now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I think both games are going to have a lot of intrigue for themselves. But yes, I've said it once, and I'll keep pounding the table for it. Florida State did everything that was asked of them with a backup quarterback, with a second string quarterback, and yet their consolation prize now is to go against Georgia, the back-to-back national champions in the Orange Bowl. That's their consolation prize. And I think the worst thing about it is you look at Florida State's roster, and now that they're not playing a meaningful bowl game, and I know you have a strong opinion about players opting out, Florida State's roster now has just been torn through because you think about it. Obviously, they weren't going to have Jordan Travis if they made the college football playoff or not. And then you just found out within the last 72 hours that their second string quarterback, Tate Rodemeyer, I believe that's his name,
Yep.
is putting himself in the transfer portal. So now they're down to, and I just checked their depth chart right before coming on here. They're down to their quarterback that played in the championship game, Brock Glenn, I believe is what his name is. He's going to start in the Orange Bowl, and the their second and third string quarterbacks are both untested freshmen. And then you have their Keenan Coleman, their top receiver, just declared
Not
for the
playing.
NFL draft today as well. So their roster has been torn apart ever since the announcement that they weren't playing in the college football. Yeah, that they're not playing in the college football playoff. So, Florida State was going to be, hamstrung already with putting out Tate Rodemeyer or Brock Glenn. Now they're hamstrung even more. So, what a hell of a consolation prize that they get going up against a Georgia Bulldog squad that I think outside of All-American tight end Brock Bowers, they're going to be at full strength. So this game may not even be exciting to watch because you thought Florida State's offense played lackluster against Louisville in the ACC title game, that the defense, like you mentioned, won it for them. Just wait till you see Florida State's offense in the Orange Bowl here in the next few days going up against the Georgia defense, which, like you said in years past, isn't what the Georgia defense has been, but they're still good. They still got NFL players out there. So just wait to see what the FBC or the College Football Committee has done to Florida State by keeping them out and basically their roster getting dismantled.
Definitely. I feel bad for Florida State. I feel bad for their fans because they're playing in the Orange Bowl, and that used to mean something. But with the advent of the portal and players not wanting to risk their draft stock, I feel like games nowadays don't really mean anything as big as a big a thing as they used to be. I condemn any player that chooses not to that opts out. If you're opting out, you're giving up on your team. I'm sorry. Playing in a bowl game, playing in the Orange Bowl, playing in the Fiesta Bowl, playing in the Cotton Bowl used to mean something. Now it's I get to go to Texas, or I get to go to Florida. I got a cool trip. I get to go stand in a room where they give me swag. But now I'm not going to play with my teammates. I'm not going to finish out the season. I'm not saying that these players have to go in there and go balls to the wall, but I don't like the fact that guys are dropping out and not playing. I think you should go out on your shield. You should go out playing alongside your teammates. I mean, this is a fantastic time for camaraderie. Your mate. If you make the trip, I think you should go out there. Don't play the whole. Say, hey, look, I'll play, but I'm not gonna play the whole game. You know what? But play, and play. And the transfer portal is killing college football. Transfer portal has essentially become the free agency of college football, and it's going to doom the sport. Mark my words. The NIL is not being used the way it should have been. It was intended to be. It was only supposed to be so that the guys could make money off their name, image, and likeness. I always thought that of, oh, they can go do an autograph signing. They can do a commercial for your local Chevy or Ford dealership. Now you got kids. I mean, there was the rumor that Ohio State's alumni somehow was going to scrounge up 20 to 21 million dollars for Marvin Harrison Jr. to come back next year. 20 to 21 million dollars for a year, 1 year. The rookies don't even make that in the NFL in their first contract. So if this is actually true that these players are being given millions and millions of dollars to switch schools, that's not it's taking away what we it's taking away what we loved about college football, and it's becoming like the NFL. And I know everyone loves the NFL, but the NFL, they're out front about their money. They're out front about how much money each of them is making, and it's a professional. It's a professional thing. Let's not take our amateurs and make them professionals, because it never works out right, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot to I think to unpack when it comes to the NIL. I think we're both in agreement that it is totally um, spiraling out of control. But this doesn't come as a surprise. Going to go when it was announced. It was basically it was a great idea. I like the idea. Paying college athletes, I get that, but now it's gotten to the point where not only are we paying college athletes for the school makes money on them. I understood the concept. I was kind of one of them old curmudgeons that you're getting a free education. Why should you get paid on top of getting a free education? But I've come around to the idea. I get it, but now this is basically college ball free agency. Like you said, this is what it's turned into, and now not not only are college football players that are entering the transfer portal. And funny, your stance on the transfer portal, you said over and over that it shouldn't be open until after the bowl games are over with. I was watching the game that just ended, um, between it was the Pop Tarts Bowl. Believe it or not, we've got to some ridiculous bowl games. But the announcer on there, I believe it was Andre Ware, a former Heisman Trophy winner, said the same thing that you've been saying all along, that the transfer portal should not open until after the bowl game. So I found that kind of interesting. But getting back to NIL for a minute, not only are college football players that are entering the portal getting money now, but there are recruitments of high school players getting NIL deals to go to a certain school. So that's how out of control that NIL has gotten. And you know, it's I said this to you the other day, you know, the rich keep getting richer. And it's teams like, and I've said this in the past, you know, Ohio State, Michigan, that aren't as collective heavy as these other schools. And the first one that comes to mind is the U, that, you know, can't afford what the bags of cash or the Brinks trucks that the Miamis and such of the world that have that cash to spend. So the NIL is definitely spiraling out of control. And it's going to be interesting to see if and when, you know, the NCAA is a governing body gets that under control, because if it's not, we're going to see the same thing in college football that you see now in Major League Baseball, where, you know, the Los Angeles Dodgers can just go out and just spend wild amount of money and get whoever they want, because no one else can compare to the cash that they have on hand.
Yep. And one of the things that slippery slope with the NIL is, let's take Texas A&M for instance. A couple years ago, they had how many, 4 or 5 5-star defensive linemen show up and play for them because they were promised all this money. And the NIL is not seen. It's not anything through the NCAA that they can regulate. Some of these kids never got their money, and Texas A&M throwing the money at them, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win. The Yankees have thrown so much money at the wall, and we have a bunch of World Series, but we haven't won one since 2009. So the U may be able to go and throw all this money at all these players, but you still got to get them to play. And the money may look fantastic at the beginning, but who's to say you're actually going to get that money? Do you unless you have it in a contract, and even some of these kids are finding out that these contracts are not ironclad, and the money is not there like they said it was going to be. Somebody has got to come in. I don't know if it's the NCAA, because the NCAA has never really been known for having, you know, good rules on this. It was at one particular point. I mean, they didn't. y- Bobby Knight had to make sure that his kid could come home every year for Christmas. Pat Knight had to get it. So the NCAA, I wouldn't put it in their hands, but sooner or later, when the NCAA goes away, because I feel like it's going to, because the big conferences like the SEC and the Big 12, Big 10, are going to find out that they don't need the SEC, that they don't need the NCAA, and they're going to break off at one particular point, and the NCAA is going to become extinct, I feel, within the next 10 to 20 years. But they're going to have to get someone in there, or some firm or something that comes up with guidelines for what these kids can get, you know. And I'm not saying that all these kids are getting this money and they're all being they're just, not not being wise with their money. I hate to toot my team's own horn, but Blake Corum every year has, for the last 3 years, has had a turkey drive for he's taken his on most of his NIL money and spent it on buying turkeys for underprivileged families in the Detroit and Ann Arbor area. He had a toy drive earlier this month that 15,000 people showed up to give toys to. So some of these guys, they use their NIL money as give back, but it's getting out of control when you find out what some of these kids are being offered. It's out of control.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, like I said, going forward, to see if the NCAA as a governing body can put some restrictions or regulations on it, because like I said, if not, it's just going to be it's going to it's going to spiral so far out of control, that, like I said, we're just going to it's going to be, the free agency of college football is what this is going to boil down to. And I know you talked about as well opting out of bowl games, and we talked about this today a little bit. I'm going to use Ohio State as an example because I think we all know, even though it's not been officially announced, that Marvin Harrison is more than likely not going to play in the bowl game. If you think he's going to play in the bowl game tomorrow night, I think you're absolutely crazy, and you need to go get checked out. But even though he hasn't announced that he is opting out or that he's not playing, he's still with the team. He's still at team activities, walkthroughs, et cetera, et cetera. I think that speaks volumes to the type of teammate that Marvin Harrison is, because you've had Ohio State receivers in the past, not to name names, but you've had Ohio State receivers in the past that have opted not to play in the game, but to not even travel with the team. So I think what Marvin's doing, even though he's obviously going to be the first non-quarterback taken, I think we're all in agreement there. But by not officially opting out and going there with your teammates who you've battled through time and time again this year, last year, and you may not be participating in practice or whatnot, but you're still there, getting behind them, giving them your support. I think that speaks volumes to what Marvin's doing, even if he doesn't play in the game tomorrow night, which obviously I don't think he needs to. And I think you're in agreement there too. But if there was one thing I could say to him, and I was hoping I could put my bias to the side on this, but I'm not going to. I would love to see you come back for one more ride. The NFL's still going to be there for you. I still think you can make tons of cash as a college player. The NFL's not going anywhere, but I also understand that outside of the quarterback position, you're probably the next best prospect. So I don't fault you for leaving, but let's give it one more try.
You know what? I would love to see Marvin Harrison come back. That would be awesome. As a Michigan fan, I'm probably one of the weirdest ones that would say that, because God, guy is I mean, he's fantastic. He's the best. He's out of all the wide receivers that I've seen over the last couple of years, whether it be Garrett Wilson or Jackson Smith and Jigba, or who was the other? Who was the other one that came out with Wilson a couple of years ago?
Chris CO2,
Olave,
Chris Olave.
Chris Olave, and I think out of all of them that I've seen, is probably the best. And he's, he may have worn some Louis Vuitton cleats, but I think he's the most humble, and I think he gets that from his dad. We all know here in Indianapolis what a fantastic and unselfish player Marvin Harrison Sr. was. But I mean, that'd be pretty cool if he did come back. I don't think he's going to. I think I do commend him for being at the at the team practices and the facilities. I'd like to see him suit up, maybe go out there and take one or two plays, because I wouldn't want the loss in Ann Arbor a couple weeks ago to be my last memory. Go out there. Let's win. Let's go out on a good note, guys. Which I personally think Ohio State's going to win. I think they stack up well against Missouri, even though Missouri is much improved. I will give Missouri's coaching staff over the years incredible credit, but I think Ohio State's going to go out there and win. And I usually don't do this because I make fun of SEC teams, SEC fan bases, because they're like, oh, let's go SEC. It could be our bitter rivalries. But I do. I want to see Ohio State go out there. I would love to see the Big Ten sweep the bowls. So far, they're 3-0. But I will be rooting for Ohio State tomorrow.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup. I think Missouri and the job that Drinkowitz has done there obviously putting Missouri on the map, and they held their own. I think when it came to the bigger SEC teams, but there's going to be some talent that I think a lot of people don't know about on the Missouri side of the ball offensively. Brady Cook is the quarterback, 3,100 yards, 20 touchdowns. Don't sell him short. And then the name escapes me. The Schroeder kid, the running back. He's gonna be an interesting watch, and I think it'll be a tough matchup for the Ohio State rush defense. And then I know a matchup that's been talked about, especially on the Ohio State side with All American corner Devin Burke, but Luther Burden. Harrison got all of the headlines this year for being the best receiver in college football, but don't sell yourself short on Luther Burden. 83 catches, 1,197 yards, almost 1,200 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So I think that's going to be a matchup to watch as well. On the Ohio State side, obviously the talk of the town has been since the Michigan game. The handful of transfer portal players, especially one Kyle McCord, which was I didn't shed any tears over seeing that happen. But Devin Brown, Sammy Ball slinging Devin Brown, wears number 33, is going to be under center tomorrow night, and he's going to give something that Ohio State fans haven't seen this year. He's going to be that mobile quarterback that I think not only Ohio State fans have been missing, but I think is an integral part of the way college football is now. You look at the 4 teams that are in the college football playoff, Josh, and all 4 of their quarterbacks can move outside the pocket and make plays when something breaks down. So I think that's what you're going to see with Devin Brown. Interesting this week. You talked about Blake Corum taking his NIL money the week of Thanksgiving and getting turkeys to underprivileged families in the Detroit area. Devin Brown took a page from the CJ Stroud playbook, and he ended up buying the whole team JBL mini speakers with his NIL money. So you talk about somebody paying it forward there. But yes, a lot of young Ohio State side, obviously Devin Brown as the quarterback. Travion Henderson, who has not decided yet if he's going to turn pro or not. He's going to be in the backfield along with Dalvin Hayden. And then on the outside, I know what your favorite receiver, Emeka Abuka, is going to be the one starting receiver, and then a boatload of young talent from Brandon Enos to Cardell Tate, who Devin Burke talked about. He may be the next pro. Cardell Tate, so keep your eye on him. Cade Stover, Stover Gronk, is going to be playing his last game. Oh, I need to make a correction. You were asking me the other day about Garrett Stover that's coming into Ohio State. That is actually Cade Stover's cousin, not brother. So I had to correct that. So a lot of talent, young talent on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, there are no opt-outs there yet either. You're going to still see the JT Tuamoliau. He'll be on one defensive end spot, and then you talked earlier, Jack Sawyer, who's decided he's going to come back. He's going to be in the other defensive spot, and then you got All-American Devin Burke in the back half. So yeah, a lot of young talent on display offensively for Ohio State, and a lot of veteran defensive players coming back or playing in the bowl game and potentially coming back. You get the feel and you get the sense from things you read that a couple years ago it was the Aiden Hutchins senior class that all they talked about was coming back and beating Ohio State. That's kind of the sense you're getting here with this junior class from Ohio State, especially you hear from Jack Sawyer and company about coming back, trying to make that one more run. Because think about it, this junior class, A, has never beat Michigan, B, never got a pair of gold pants, and C, has never played for a Big Ten championship in Indianapolis. So a lot of goals that this junior class has laid out. I know Marvin has talked about that as well. The reason he came to Ohio State was to obviously beat Michigan and play in Indianapolis, where, as you mentioned, his dad played at. So a lot of things are weighing on the minds of those juniors that are draft eligible, but the census and the things that I'm hearing is the big reason that these juniors that are draft eligible for Ohio State may come back is their draft grades that they're getting back aren't as high as they expected. So playing one more year could obviously up their draft stock tremendously.
Definitely. I can relate. For the longest time, Michigan got their heinies beat up by Ohio State, and just seemed like year after year it just didn't seem to change. And then the Aiden Hutchinson and his and Dax Hill, they came in and they were on they were on the warpath, and they finally beat them. So I can understand how a team can come back and put the draft stocks aside and want to come back for one more year and try to conquer your rivals and get a lot of goals. I mean, if you've never played in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship, touchdown. What was I saying? Oh, if you never played, I mean, that's a goal. I mean, everyone wants to win a national championship, but when you go to Michigan and Ohio State, the one thing you want to do is beat Michigan or Ohio State, whichever one you're on, and go play for that Big Ten championship because that's a prestigious thing. It used to be before we ever had any of these playoffs or the BCS. I mean, it was the number one goal was to win the conference, and the 10-year war between Michigan and Ohio State was a good one with Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, and every year they were fighting to win that championship. If they won a national championship, fantastic, but the year was terrible if you lost to your rivals. And unfortunately, I've been on the winning end for the last 3 years, and we could flip it, and they could with all that Michigan's going to lose this year. We could flip it, and it could go back to another 10-year shellacking that Michigan gets from Ohio State. We never know. So it'll be interesting to see how many of those players come back. I mean, like you said, Marvin's probably not coming back. You guys have a talented freshman quarterback coming in next year, and Aaron Nolan. He's put up some highlights. And if you guys add anybody from the portal, and maybe Devin Brown comes out and balls out so much that he secures the first team reps going into the spring game, and he becomes that starter that I bet a lot of Ohio State fans wish he was this year. Even though I think McCord did a admirable job with what he was given, except for one game.
Yep, and that one game, like you said, could make or break your season. So definitely going to be interesting as the big boys the bowl game started kicking off today. Interesting just watching what's on now. Arizona and Oklahoma. Arizona out to a 10-0 lead on Oklahoma. So in the Alamo Bowl or Viero Alamo Bowl. It's gonna be interesting to see how that ends. But Josh, we've ran this about an hour and a half. Anything else that you want to cover before you take us on out?
Not really. I mean, I think it's been a fantastic first show. We are the football fanatics, and we will be coming back maybe here in a couple weeks when the NFL playoffs come about. We can preview those. I think right now there's 22 of the teams in the entire NFL that are they're currently still eligible somehow, some way, that have a chance to make the playoffs. So I'm excited. This has been a great time. Of course, maybe later on in a couple weeks, both of us will be a little bit more healthy, less coughing. We kind of look like we're 2 packs a day smokers. But I think this is going to be a fantastic adventure, and I can't wait to take it with you. And we'll grow and do a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about the teams that are still alive in the NFL playoffs, and surprisingly, I didn't think we would be in this. They would be in this position, but the hometown Indianapolis Colts are not only in the division race, but a wild card race as well. So definitely going to be things to watch as we roll in to the new year and new possibilities. So I want to wish everyone a happy new year. And we have a lot of football to watch here in the next couple weeks. A lot of football to talk about, and definitely look forward with Josh, as he said, to do that for you. Josh, take us out.
Thanks for watching, guys. We are the Football Fanatics. This is our second podcast we got going on. We'll start up another one come sometime in January, but this is an exciting thing, and I cannot wait to go down this journey with you, Derik. And it's going to be a great time. And go blue.